My name is Rebecca Thompson. I'm 28 years old. And I was a single mother trying to escape an abusive marriage in 1887 Arizona territory. What I'm about to tell you is the most harrowing and transformative experience of my life. How? A young Apache boy saved my life by taking my place in front of a gun, and how his sacrifice changed everything I thought I knew about courage, love, and what it means to be human. It all began on a scorching July morning when I made the most terrifying decision of my life, to run away from my husband with my 4-year-old daughter, Emma. "Mama," Emma whispered as I packed our few belongings into a worn canvas bag. "Where are we going?" "We're going on an adventure, sweetheart," I told her, trying to keep my voice steady despite the fear that was eating me alive from the inside. "Is Papa coming with us?" "No, baby. Papa is staying here." The truth was much darker than I could ever explain to a 4-year-old child. My husband, Marcus Thompson, was a violent drunk who had been beating me for 3 years. The bruises on my ribs were still purple from his latest rage, and I knew that if I didn't leave soon, he would eventually kill me or worse, hurt Emma. "Rebecca." Marcus's voice boomed from downstairs, slurred with whiskey even though it was barely past dawn. "Where the hell are you?" My blood turned to ice. It was supposed to be passed out for at least another 2 hours. If he found me packing, if he realized what I was planning, ... "Stay quiet, Emma," I whispered, pressing my finger. To my lips, I could hear his heavy footsteps on the stairs, each one bringing him closer to discovering our escape plan. My hands shook as I grabbed the last of Emma's clothes and the small amount of money I had been secretly saving for months. "Rebecca." His voice was closer now, angrier. There was no time to think, no time to plan. I scooped Emma into my arms, grabbed our bag, and climbed out the bedroom window onto the roof of the back porch. The drop to the ground was about 8 feet dangerous, but not as dangerous as staying. "Hold tight to Mama," I whispered to Emma as I lowered myself from the roof's edge and dropped to the hard-packed earth below. The impact sent shooting pain through my ankles, but I forced myself to keep moving. I could hear Marcus upstairs, shouting my name and throwing furniture around as he searched for us. We ran. I had stolen Marcus's horse, a sturdy mare named Belle, and we rode hard toward the mountains. My plan was simple but desperate. Reach the town of Prescott, about 60 miles away, where my sister lived. She had written to me months ago, begging me to leave Marcus and come stay with her. "I know what he's doing to you," her letter had said. "Come to me. I'll protect you and Emma." But 60 miles through Apache territory with a 4-year-old child was a journey that could easily end in death. For the first day, everything went according to plan. We followed the old mining road that wound through the desert, stopping only to rest Belle and give Emma water from our single canteen. The landscape was harsh and unforgiving, with stretches of red rock, scrub brush, and cacti under a merciless sun. "Mama, I'm hot," Emma complained as we rode. "I know, sweetheart. We'll rest soon." But I knew we couldn't rest for long. Marcus would discover our trail eventually, and when he did, he would come after us with a fury that terrified me more than the desert itself. On the second day, our luck ran out. We had just crested a small hill when I saw them, 3 men on horseback, riding hard in our direction. Even from a distance, I could see that one of them was Marcus. The other 2 were probably his drinking buddies from town, men who would do anything for whiskey money. "Mama, who are those men?" Emma asked, following my gaze. "Nobody important. Baby, we're going to play a game now. We're going to ride very fast, like we're racing the wind." I spurred Belle into a gallop, but I knew it was hopeless. Our horse was tired from 2 days of hard riding, and we were carrying double weight. The men chasing us had fresh mounts and the advantage of knowing the terrain. Within an hour, they had closed the distance to less than a quarter mile. "Rebecca." Marcus's voice carried across the desert like a death sentence. "You can't run from me forever." I pushed Belle harder, but the poor horse was exhausted. Her breathing was labored, and I could feel her beginning to stumble. If she collapsed, it would be completely helpless. That's when I saw the canyon. It was a narrow cut in the red rock, barely wide enough for a horse and rider. If I could reach it, maybe we could lose them in the maze of passages that wound through the mountains. It was a desperate gamble, but it was our only chance. "Hold on tight, Emma," I said as we approached the canyon entrance. The walls of the canyon rose up around us like the ribs of some ancient beast. The passage was so narrow that my knees almost touched the rock on both sides. Belle's hooves echoed off the stone walls as we rode deeper into the labyrinth. For a moment, I thought we had escaped. The canyon twisted and turned, creating dozens of possible routes. Even if Marcus followed us in, he would have to guess which way we had gone. But then I heard the sound that made my blood run cold. The echo of hoofbeats behind us. They had followed us into the canyon. I urged Belle forward, taking random turns, hoping to confuse our pursuers. But the canyon was smaller than I had hoped, and after 20 minutes of desperate riding, we emerged into a circular clearing surrounded by high rock walls. It was a dead end. "Mama," Emma whispered, sensing my fear. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, baby. Everything's going to be fine." But I knew it wasn't true. We were trapped like animals in a cage, with nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. The sound of approaching horses grew louder. And within minutes, Marcus and his two companions rode into the clearing. Their faces were flushed with exertion and anger, and I could see the violence in Marcus's eyes. Well, Marcus said, dismounting from his horse with deliberate slowness. "Look what we have here. My loving wife and daughter, taking a little vacation without telling me." "Marcus, please," I said, dismounting from Belle and pulling Emma behind me. "Let us go. You don't want us anyway." "Oh, but I do want you, Rebecca. I want you very much. You're my property, and nobody steals from Marcus Thompson." One of his companions, a thin man named Jake, was grinning like this was the most entertainment he'd had in months. "What do you want to do with them, Marcus?" Jake asked. "I want to teach my wife a lesson about running away from her husband." Marcus pulled out his gun-a-heavy Colt revolver that I had seen him use to kill rabbits and coyotes. But now it was pointed at me. "Mama!" Emma cried, clinging to my skirt. "Please, Marcus," I begged. "Emma doesn't deserve this. She's just a baby. She's my baby, and she needs to learn what happens to people who disobey me." I closed my eyes and prepared to die. I had failed. I had tried to save my daughter from a life of violence and fear, and instead, it led us both to our deaths in this God-forsaken canyon. But then I heard a sound that changed everything. The whistle of an arrow cutting through the air. The arrow struck Jake in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him crashing to the ground. His scream echoed off the canyon walls as Marcus and the third man spun around looking for the source of the attack. "Apache!" The third man shouted, raising his rifle. That's when I saw him, a young Apache boy, probably no more than 16 years old, stood on a ledge about 20 feet above us. He was lean and muscular, with long black hair and dark eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. In his hands was a bow, with another arrow already nocked and ready to fire. "Let the woman and child go," the boy said in clear English. Marcus laughed, but there was nervousness in the sound. One Apache boy against 3 armed men. I like those odds. Feel like them less when there are 20 more Apache warriors in these canyons, the boy replied calmly. I looked around frantically, but saw no sign of other warriors. Was he bluffing? Or were there really Apache fighters hidden in the rocks around us? "He's lying," the third man said. "There's nobody else here." "Maybe," Marcus said, "but he kept his gun trained on me. But it doesn't matter. I came here for my wife, and I'm not leaving without her." "Then you will die here," the boy said simply. What happened next unfolded so quickly that I barely had time to process it. The boy leaped down from the ledge, landing with cat-like grace just a few feet from where Emma and I stood. In one fluid motion, he pushed us behind a large boulder and turned to face Marcus and his men. "Run," he whispered to me. "Take the child and run. I can't leave you here alone. You can and you will. Go now while they are focused on me." Marcus had his gun pointed at the boy now, and I could see his finger tightening on the trigger. "You made a big mistake, boy," Marcus snarled. "Nobody interferes with my family. Your family," the boy said, and there was something like disgust in his voice. "A man who points a gun at a woman and child has no family. He has only victims." "Shut up," Marcus screamed. And I knew he was about to pull the trigger. That's when the Apache boy did something that I will never forget for as long as I live. He stepped directly in front of Marcus's gun, placing himself between the weapon and where Emma and I were hiding. "If you want to shoot someone," the boy said quietly, "shoot me. But the woman and child leave here safely." "No," I screamed, but it was too late. Marcus pulled the trigger. The gunshot echoed through the canyon like thunder, and I watched in horror as the young Apache boy staggered backward, clutching his chest. Blood was already spreading across his shirt, but somehow, impossibly, he remained standing. "Run," he gasped, looking directly at me. "Run now." And that's when I realized that his sacrifice had given us exactly what we needed, a chance. While Marcus and his men were focused on the wounded boy, I grabbed Emma and ran toward a narrow passage I had noticed on the far side of the clearing. It was barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through, but it was our only escape route. "Mama, what about the boy?" Emma asked as we ran. "I don't know, baby. I don't know." Behind us, I could hear shouting and more gunshots. But I didn't look back. I couldn't look back. The boy had sacrificed himself to give us a chance to escape, and I wasn't going to waste that gift. We squeezed through the narrow passage and found ourselves in another canyon, this one with multiple exits. I chose one at random and kept running, carrying Emma when she got tired, until we were miles away from the clearing where a young Apache boy had taken a bullet meant for me. It wasn't until we were safe in my sister's house in Prescott that I allowed myself to think about what had happened. A stranger, a boy I had never seen before, had given his life to save mine and Emma's. But why? Why would an Apache boy risk everything for a white woman and her child? I would spend the next several years trying to answer that question. When I finally found the answer, it would change everything I thought I knew about the world. 3 years passed before I could bring myself to return to that canyon. 3 years of nightmares, of guilt, of wondering whether the young Apache boy had survived, and if he hadn't, whether his death was my fault. Emma was 7 now, a bright and curious child who had adapted well to our new life in Prescott. My sister Margaret had welcomed us with open arms, and I had found work as a seamstress in town. Marcus had never found us, whether because he couldn't track us or because he had given up. I didn't know and didn't care, but I couldn't stop thinking about the boy. "Mama," Emma said one evening as I tucked her into bed, "do you ever think about the Indian boy who saved us?" "Every day, sweetheart. Do you think he's still alive?" "I hope so, Emma. I pray so. Why did he help us? We were strangers." It was the same question I'd been asking myself for 3 years. "I don't know, baby, but someday I'm going to find out." That someday came in the spring of 1890. When I finally gathered the courage to return to the canyon where our lives had been forever changed. I hired a guide named Tom Brennan, an old prospector who knew the Apache territories better than anyone. I told him I was looking for someone, but I didn't tell him the whole story. "You sure you want to go into Apache country, ma'am?" Tom asked as we prepared for the journey. "It's not safe for a white woman, especially not alone." "I won't be alone. I'll have you. I'm just one old man with a rifle. If we run into a war party, ... we'll be careful." "But I have to do this, Tom. I have to find him." The journey to the canyon took 2 days, and with each mile, the memories became more vivid. I could almost hear the echo of gunshots, almost see the young boy falling backward with blood spreading across his chest, When we finally reached the circular clearing where everything had happened, I felt like I was stepping back in time. The rocks were the same, the narrow passages were the same. Even the boulder where the boy had hidden Emma and me was exactly as I remembered it. "This is the place," I told Tom. "What happened here?" I told him the story then, all of it, about Marcus and the chase, about being trapped in the canyon, about the Apache boy who had taken a bullet meant for me. Tom listened in silence, occasionally nodding or making small sounds of understanding. "And you never found out what happened to him?" he asked when I finished. "No. We ran, just like he told us to. I don't even know his name." Tom walked around the clearing, examining the rocks and the ground with the practiced eye of someone who had spent decades in the wilderness. "There," he said, pointing to a dark stain on the red rock. "That's blood, old blood, but blood nonetheless." My heart sank. So he died here? Maybe. Or maybe he was just wounded and his people came for him. His people. Apache, don't abandon. Their own, ma'am. That boy was part of a band. They would have come looking for him. But how can we find out for sure? Tom was quiet for a long moment, studying the canyon walls. "There's an Apache settlement about 20 miles north of here. Peaceful band, led by a chief named Nalnish. They trade with the army sometimes, and they speak English. If your boy survived, they might know about it. Will they talk to us? They'll talk to me. I've done business with them before. But ma'am, you need to understand something. If this boy died saving you, his people might not be too happy to see you." "I understand, but I have to try." We rode north for half a day before we saw the smoke from their fires. The Apache settlement was larger than I had expected, maybe 30 or 40 wickups scattered along a stream that wound through a small valley. As we approached, I could see people stopping their work to watch us. "Let me do the talking," Tom said, "and whatever happens, don't show fear. Apache respect courage, but they can smell fear from a mile away." A group of warriors rode out to meet us before we reached the settlement. They were armed with rifles and bows, and their faces were painted for war. My heart was pounding, but I tried to keep my expression calm. The leader of the group was an older man with gray streaking his black hair. He spoke to Tom in a mixture of Apache and English, gesturing toward me several times. "He wants to know why you're here," Tom translated. "Tell him I'm looking for information about a young Apache boy who saved my life 3 years ago." Tom translated, and the older warrior's expression changed. He said something sharp and quick, and the other warriors moved closer. "What did he say?" I asked. "He said, 'You're the white woman from the canyon. Word of what happened has spread among the bands. Does that mean the boy's alive? He wants you to come with him to see Chief Nolish. He'll decide whether to tell you anything.'" We were escorted into the settlement under heavy guard. People came out of their wickiups to stare at Usman, women and children, all watching with expressions that ranged from curiosity to outright hostility. Chief Nalnish was a man in his 60s with weathered features and eyes that seemed to see everything. He sat cross-legged in front of the largest wickiup, smoking a pipe and studying me with an intensity that made me feel like he was reading my soul. He spoke to Tom and Apache for several minutes before Tom turned to me. "He knows who you are. He knows about the canyon." "What does he know?" "He knows that a young warrior named Kitzazel Choate, means red boy in Apache, was shot while protecting a white woman and her child." "Is he alive?" Tom asked the question, and Chief Nolish's response was long and complex. "He's alive," Tom said finally. "But he was badly wounded. The bullet damaged his lung, and he was sick for many months. He nearly died." Relief flooded through me so powerfully that I almost fell off my horse. "Can I see him? Can I thank him?" Tom translated, and Chief Nolnish's expression grew stern. He spoke rapidly, gesturing toward me and then toward the mountains. He says Kitzazel Cho is no longer here. After he recovered, he left the band. Where did he go? The chief won't say. But he wants to know why you've come here. What do you want from them? I took a deep breath, knowing that my next words would determine whether I learned the truth or was sent away empty-handed. I want to understand why he saved us. I want to know why a young Apache boy would risk his life for strangers. And I want to find him so I can thank him properly. Tom translated, and Chief Nolnish was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. Says, "You may stay tonight. Tomorrow, he will tell you Kit Sizel Cho's story, but he warns you, the truth may not be what you expect." That night, I lay awake in the wiki-up they had given me, staring up at the stars and wondering what I would learn in the morning. What could Chief Nolnish possibly tell me that would be unexpected? The answer came at dawn when the chief called me to sit with him by his fire. Kit Sizel Cho was not born Apache, he said in careful English. He was born white like you. I stared at him in shock. What? When he was very small, maybe 4 or 5 years old, his family was killed by Apache raiders. But instead of killing the boy, the war leader brought him back to our band. My sister, who had lost her own son, adopted him and raised him as Apache. So he was. He was white by blood, but Apache by choice. He learned our ways, spoke our language, became one of our warriors. But he never forgot where he came from. And that's why he saved us. Perhaps he saved you because it was the right thing to do. Kit Sizel Cho always had a strong sense of justice, even as a child. Where is he now, Chief Nolnish? Which is quiet for a moment. He went to live among the white people. He said that, after what happened in the canyon, he realized he belonged in both worlds, white and Apache. He wanted to find a way to bridge the gap between them. Do you know where? I know. But before I tell you, you must understand something. Kit Sizel Cho paid a great price for saving you. Not just the bullet wound, but something deeper. He was cast out by some of our people for helping whites. They said he had forgotten who he was, but you don't believe that? I believe he remembered exactly who he was. He was a man who would not stand by and watch innocents be harmed, no matter what color their skin. Chief Nolnish reached into a leather pouch and pulled out something that made my breath catch, a small wooden cross, carved with intricate designs. He made this while he was recovering from his wound, said it was for the white woman and her child if they ever came looking for him. I took the cross with trembling hands. It was beautiful, carved with both Christian and Apache symbols intertwined in a pattern that somehow made perfect sense. He's in Tucson, Chief Nolnish said. He works as a translator for the territorial government. He helps negotiate between Apache bands and white settlers. What name does he use among whites? He calls himself David Red Cloud, but he will always be Kit Sizel Cho to us. I stayed with the Apache band for 3 more days, learning more about the boy who had saved our lives. The picture that emerged was of someone extraordinary, a person who had found a way to honor both sides of his heritage, who had turned personal tragedy into a mission of peace. When I finally left the settlement, I carried with me not just the wooden cross, but a new understanding of what courage really meant. Kit Sizel Cho David Red Cloud had not just taken a bullet for me in that canyon. He had taken on the much harder task of living between 2 worlds, of building bridges where others saw only walls. Now I had to find him and discover what kind of man he had become. The journey to Tucson took 5 days, and with each mile, my nervousness grew. What would I say to the man who had saved my life? How do you thank someone for giving you everything? Emma, now 10 years old, had begged to come with me. "Please, Mama," she had said. "I want to see him too. I want to thank him." "It might be dangerous, sweetheart. You said he was good. You said he saved us." "He did. But that was a long time ago. People change. Good people don't change into bad people," Emma had said with the absolute certainty of childhood. And he was good. In the end, I couldn't argue with her logic. Emma deserved to meet the man who had given her a chance at life, Tucson in 1890 was a bustling frontier town, full of miners, ranchers, soldiers, and traders. The territorial government offices were housed in a large adobe building near the center of town, and that's where I was told I could find David Red Cloud. "You looking for the Apache translator?" asked the clerk when I inquired. "He's in the back office, working on some treaty documents." "Could you tell him that Rebecca Thompson is here to see him? Tell him it's about something that happened 3 years ago in a canyon." The clerk disappeared into the back of the building, and I waited with Emma in the front office, my heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. When the door opened and he walked out, I almost didn't recognize him. The boy I remembered from the canyon had been lean and wild, dressed in traditional Apache clothing with long black hair flowing free. The man who stood before me now wore a white shirt, dark trousers, and a vest. His hair was shorter, though still long by white standards. And he carried himself with the bearing of someone who was comfortable in both worlds, but his eyes were the same, dark and intelligent, with a depth that spoke of experiences far beyond his years. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, and his voice was exactly as I remembered, it calm, steady, and somehow reassuring. "David," I said, then corrected myself. "Or do you prefer Kitsaisel Cho among friends? Either name is fine. And are we friends?" "Would hope so, considering what we've been through together." Emma stepped out from behind me, and David's expression softened. "And this must be Emma. You were much smaller when I last saw you." "I remember you," Emma said shyly. "You've saved us from the bad men. You saved yourselves. I just helped a little." "Took a bullet for us," I said. "That's more than a little help." David gestured toward a small cafe across the street. "Would you like to get some coffee? We have a lot to talk about." Over the next 2 hours, we shared our stories. I told him about our life in Prescott, about Emma's schooling, about the nightmares that had finally faded and the guilt that hadn't. He told me about his recovery, about his decision to leave the Apache band, about his work as a translator and mediator. "Why did you leave your people?" Asked. "They weren't all my people anymore," he said sadly. "Some of them felt that by helping you, I had betrayed everything they stood for. They said I had chosen white blood over Apache blood." But that's not true, isn't it?" "I did choose to help you over helping them maintain their hatred of whites. Kay, you chose to help innocent people. That's not the same thing." "Maybe not, but the result was the same. I couldn't stay where I wasn't trusted." "And you don't regret it?" David was quiet for a moment, staring out the window at the busy street. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that the world is divided into sides that can't see past their own pain. But I don't regret saving you and Emma." "Why?" I asked. "Why did you do it?" "Chief Nalnish told me you were white by birth, but that still doesn't explain why you risked everything for strangers." "Because I knew what it was like to be helpless," he said simply. "I knew what it was like to watch violence destroy everything you love. When I saw you and Emma in that canyon, I saw myself at 5 years old watching my parents die. So you saved us because you couldn't save them. I saved you because it was right. Because someone needed to break the cycle of violence, and I was the only one there who could do it." Emma, who had been listening quietly, suddenly spoke up. "Are you sad that you got hurt?" David smiled at her. "No, little one, I'm not sad about that." "Good, because Mama says that sometimes good people have to get hurt to help other people. Your Mama is very wise. She cries sometimes," Emma said with the brutal honesty of childhood. "When she thinks I'm not looking, she cries about you." I felt my face burning with embarrassment. "Emma, ... "It's all right," David said gently. "I understand. Do you?" I asked. "Because I'm not sure I understand it myself. For 3 years, I've felt like I owe you something I can never repay." "You don't owe me anything. I owe you everything. My life, Emma's life, our future, all of it exists because you were willing to die for us. And what would you have me do with that debt?" "I don't know. That's why I came here. To find out what." You want from us? David leaned back in his chair, studying me with those penetrating dark eyes. What I want, he said finally, is for you to live a good life. I want Emma to grow up strong and kind and unafraid. I want you to find happiness and peace. That's all. It's everything. But what about you? What do you want for yourself? Want to continue the work I'm doing? Want to help prevent other families from going through what we both went through? I want to build bridges between people who think they're enemies. And is it working? Sometimes. Not as often as I'd like, but sometimes. We talked until the sun began to set, sharing stories and memories, filling in the gaps that 3 years had created. As the evening wore on, I found myself drawn to this man in ways I hadn't expected. He was unlike anyone I had ever met, someone who had experienced the worst that both worlds could offer, but who had somehow emerged with his compassion intact. He spoke with equal fluency about Apache traditions and territorial law, about survival in the wilderness and negotiation in government offices. Where do you live? I asked as we prepared to leave the cafe. I have a small house on the edge of town. It's not much, but it's home. Would you like to have dinner with us tomorrow? Emma and I are staying at the hotel, but I could cook something. I would like that very much. That night, as I tucked Emma into bed at the hotel, she asked the question I had been dreading. Mama, do you like David? Of course I like him, sweetheart. He's a good man. No, I mean, do you like him the way you used to like Papa before Papa became mean? I sat on the edge of her bed, struggling to find the right words. David is very different from your father, Emma. I know. It's nice, and he makes you smile. Does that bother you? No. I like it when you smile. You should smile more. What would you think if ... if David became part of our family? Do you mean like a new papa? Maybe? Someday? If you wanted to? Emma was quiet for a moment, considering this. Would he teach me to shoot a bow and arrow? I think he might. Then I think it would. Be good. The next evening, David came to our hotel room for dinner. I had managed to convince the hotel kitchen to let me use their stove, and I prepared a simple meal of beef stew and cornbread. This is delicious, David said. It's been a long time since I've had a home-cooked meal. Don't you cook for yourself? Cook to survive. This is different. This is cooking with love. After dinner, Emma convinced David to tell her stories about his life with the Apache. He spoke about hunting and tracking, about the ceremonies and traditions, about the deep connection between the Apache people and the land. Will you teach me some Apache words? Emma asked. If your mother doesn't mind. I don't mind, I said. I think it would be good for her to learn. As the evening progressed, I found myself watching David with growing admiration. He was patient with Emma's endless questions, gentle with her curiosity about his scars, and kind in ways that Marcus had never been. When Emma finally fell asleep on the hotel room's small sofa, David and I sat by the window, talking quietly. She's a remarkable child, he said. She is. She's been through so much, but she's still so full of hope. Children are resilient. They adapt to whatever world they find themselves in. Is that what you did? Adapted. I had to. The alternative was to die through physically or spiritually. And now? Are you happy with the world you've created for yourself? David was quiet for a long moment. I'm content. I'm useful. I'm making a difference, even if it's a small one. But are you happy? Happiness is a luxury I haven't allowed myself to think about much. Maybe it's time you did. He looked at me then with an expression I couldn't quite read. What are you saying, Rebecca? I'm saying that you saved my life, and now I want to return the favor. How? By giving you something to live for besides duty and obligation. By giving you a family. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're brave and kind and selfless. I know you risked everything to save strangers. I know you've spent 3 years building bridges between people who hate each other. And you think that's enough for a marriage? I think it's more than most marriages start with. David stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the dark street below. Rebecca, I'm not like other men. I live between two worlds, and I'll never fully belong to either one. Are you prepared for that? I'm prepared for whatever comes, as long as we face it together. Anna? What if she decides she doesn't want an Apache stepfather? She already told me she thinks it would be good. She wants you to teach her to shoot a bow and arrow. David laughed the first time I had heard him truly laugh since we'd been reunited. In that case, he said, turning back to me, I think we should talk about the future. We were married 6 months later in a ceremony that combined Christian and Apache traditions. Emma walked me down the aisle, beaming with pride at her new father. Chief Noel Nish came from the reservation to perform the Apache portion of the ceremony, officially welcoming me into the tribe as David's wife. Our life together wasn't always easy. There were people in Tucson who disapproved of our marriage, who whispered about the white woman who had married an Indian. There were Apache who still questioned David's loyalty to his adopted people. But we built something beautiful together. David continued his work as a translator and mediator, and I helped by learning Apache customs and language, becoming a bridge myself between the two communities. Emma grew up bilingual and bicultural, equally comfortable in both worlds. She learned to shoot a bow and arrow as promised, but she also learned to read and write in both English and Apache. She became living proof that it was possible to honor multiple heritages without betraying any of them. Years later, when Emma was grown and married with children of her own, she asked me if I ever regretted leaving Marcus and running into that canyon. Never, I told her. That canyon led us to David. It led us to our real family, even though it was so dangerous, especially because it was dangerous. Sometimes the most important journeys are the ones that scare us the most. David lived to be 73 years old, spending his final decades as one of the most respected mediators in the Southwest. He helped negotiate dozens of treaties and agreements, always working to find peaceful solutions to conflicts between Apache bands and white settlers. But his greatest achievement wasn't professional, it was personal. He proved that love could transcend race, that families could be built from the most unlikely circumstances, and that one act of courage could change the trajectory of multiple lives. The young Apache boy who took my place in front of that gun didn't just save my life, he gave me a life worth living, and in return, I gave him what he had never had before, a home where he was loved, not despite his complicated heritage, but because of it. The end disclaimer: this story is completely fictional and created for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people or events is purely coincidental.